Hello and welcome to my patch notes rundown for the 21st of August. For anyone that might be new to this channel, every notable update week I go through the patch notes on stream, and the day after I upload a video like this where I filter out the non-gameplay changes like typo corrections, include example in-game footage, and provide you with informed and tested comments where necessary. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Players can no longer drop items, perform emotes, or have their familiars be visible to other players at the ritual site. Honestly, if it was up to me, I would have players who lure, scam, and grief to be permanently banned, as these are people who are knowingly causing others harm, and there is absolutely no reason to harbour them in our community. Omid for president. The Shambling Horror's target is now highlighted by green smoke. Even though this is much better than the difficulty mostly being due to the lack of visibility, I feel like this takes away from the fun but simple problem solving where players could use the horror's movement speed and pathing to distinguish where its targeted location was. I would much rather have multiple green smoke locations with a limited number of attempts to encourage players to do more than simply clicking on the horror than the smoke. Added smoke clouds when spawning Wandering Soul and corrupted glyphs. Added passive audio to Soulstorm and Defile. Added spawn audio to Shambling Horror and corrupt glyphs. Added success audio to Shambling Horror, corrupt glyphs, and Soulstorm. Added audio when the Defile pool crackles. Unfortunately, a lot of these new sounds are split between sound effects and ambient sounds in the audio settings, and having both on can be quite chaotic. Increase the brightness of the Wandering Soul and Shambling Horror. Slow down the movement speed of the Wandering Soul. This should stop players from failing the Wandering Soul in cases where players were chasing the soul and as soon as they reached it, they stopped moving without dismissing it. Remove the pop-up text when clicking on the Shambling Horror. Changes have been made to the Shambling Horror so players can continue to guess on ritual components even after failing without having to re-click the horror. Move the pop-up text from when random events spawn and despawn to appear over the random event rather than in the middle of the screen. I really like this addition as it makes locating the disturbances very easy, and I don't think the obfuscation of visual information is ever a good form of difficulty. Players can now smoothly interact with ritual disturbances without being force walked off ritual component tiles. They've weirdly enough made it so players can interact with disturbances without being force walked off glyph and candle tiles, but you're still force walked off them normally or after you finish a disturbance. It's not that big of a deal at this point, but they should just make it so it doesn't force walk players regardless. Also, if possible, I don't think the component tiles should be targetable with dive or blade dive to prevent frustrating misclicks. The fixed camera view for the ritual site has been adjusted to give a better view of the components behind the pedestal. With this update, they've extended the range where the fixed camera is active, even well beyond the viewing range. So if players run to the ritual chest, they will remain in the fixed camera view, and will have to manually switch in and out rather than it being a seamless transition. The front two ritual light source spots have been moved to the sides to clear a path between the ritual platform and the pedestal. Clicking away from the ritual platform before starting no longer force walks players back to the platform. The materials required to repair a ritual component are now listed in the error message. Continuing with the Necromancy general patch notes. Added messaging when attempting to repair all on a component you don't meet the level requirements to repair. Added a bank pin to the ritual chest. The Boaters all the way down achievement can now be completed with a gilded boater. Super Necromancy Potion is now made with 5 congealed blood and a spirit weed potion. The path east of the zoo from Ardoon to the Necromancer's Tower has been opened up. Picked up regular ashes will now be transported to the bank while wearing the Tome of 1 or Tome of 2. Targeting an NPC while using Necromancy and Revolution will now prioritize using an ability over a basic attack. This has made auto-retaliating much more responsive when using Revolution, and you're expected to see notable XP per hour increases at places where you're killing targets with low HP. Conjured spirits will no longer forcefully close interfaces. The Death Skull ability will now correctly ready Death Spark when using the Death Essence special attack from the Omniguard. The Darkness incantation duration has been increased from 4 minutes to 12 minutes. Rune costs have been slightly increased to accommodate for this change. Also, players will no longer have to worry about the spell being cleared when teleporting to different instances. Reduced the rune cost of the Invoke Death incantation. The bloat damage over time now has a 1.8 second tick time, down from 3 seconds. Even though bloat is very powerful, dealing an average of 910% damage with a single ability with the Ghost Haunted debuff, it was only 17% damage every 0.6 second tick. Now it's up to 28%. I personally liked it since I'm not a fan of upkeeping bleeds, but I think it was a necessary change since it suffered greatly at fast bosses or bosses with intermittent downtime, which, to be realistic, covers a lot of encounters. Updated the Ice Nihil to a Necromancy familiar. The Omniguard passive effect required stacks have been reduced from 6 to 5. This is a pretty insignificant change as it doesn't increase your overall damage by much, and it's not something you'll need to monitor or play around. And that is completely fine, since it's just a passive effect that's meant to help players get a feel for it before enhancing it with a special attack. Very similar to the Bow of the Last Guardian, I like this trend of introducing a simple passive coupled with a special attack that enhances said effect. The Omniguard special attack adrenaline cost has been reduced from 50% to 30%. Now, this could be a meta-shifting change, however I can't give my solidified opinion on this as it requires extensive testing and thorough experience, so please take my current thoughts on it with a grain of salt. For this analysis, I'm going to ignore the fact that Soul Strike coupled with flanking is currently ridiculously powerful, since I'm anticipating for it to get nerfed. The special attack costs 27% adrenaline with a Ring of Vigor and initially deals 400% damage. In addition, it immediately readies Death Spark, which causes the next Necromancy basic attack to deal double damage. Lastly, for 30 seconds, the following abilities also ready Death Spark: Touch of Death, Finger of Death, and Death Skulls. I was originally thinking about using this during the downtime of Living Death, but it synergizes insanely well with the ultimate, as the abilities that ready Death Spark are ones you're using constantly, and the biggest problem is fitting it in with the constant starving for adrenaline. I tried swapping it out for Bloat at Raziel and ended up being roughly the same pace, but with much less lenient rotation, as you need to get off your Death Sparks and make sure you don't overcap on Necrosis when doing so. So maybe if the kill times are longer and it allows for more of a setup, I think incorporating this could make a significant change. Necromancy abilities can no longer benefit from the Greater Fury ability's critical strike buff. The Vengeful Ghost duration is no longer shortened when using life transfer with the first Necromancer's 4-piece set effect that increases the duration of conjurations. Players can now use Dive and Blade Dive during Living Death. Moving on to more general updates. Melee, ranged, and magic abilities can once again benefit from the Meteor Strike, Incendiary Shot, and Tsunami abilities' adrenaline boosting buffs. I think this is a good change, as I'm a firm believer that if something is unintuitive or unintended, it doesn't exclusively warrant a nerf. I always look at two things: whether it's balanced, which I would say this is for the effort that is required, and more importantly, whether it's fun for players to utilize. This is an aspect that enables hybriding, which I personally would say is the most fun I've ever had engaging with PvM in RuneScape across the 14 years of my endgame experience. They also commented on it, and I would agree that it's better to replace it with something as fun rather than just completely remove it and leave the space empty. However, I will have to disagree with the unnecessary complexity for the less experienced players, as every game has these underlying elements, like utilizing animation cancelling in League of Legends, wave dashing in Super Smash Bros. Melee, utilizing momentum in Apex Legends to do various maneuvers like wall jumping, or rocket jumping in Quake, and the list goes on. Less experienced players, let alone new players, won't interact or be aware of these mechanics to be overwhelmed by their complexity. And honestly, that's fine, because by the time they improve at the game and dig into ways of getting better, they'll be ready for that complexity. Using the Blood Reaver's special ability will no longer stall the player. Fix an issue where Aurora and Soul variants of the tier 90 power armors could not be upgraded to their elite tier 92 versions. And that's it for this week's patch notes. There are a lot of great Necromancy changes, and I'm eager to see what else they tweak in the future. Lastly, I really want to give them props for reverting the critical strike buff changes, which is a type of decision that I feel like would never happen in any other game. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you for watching and take care.